A few years ago, a 5% savings account would have sounded like a fantasy. Banks were paying almost nothing. Your money sat still, and everyone knew it. Saving felt responsible, but it also felt pointless. Then something changed. Suddenly, banks started advertising 5% again. Not in small print, not as a temporary promotion. Front and center, 5%. Risk-free, guaranteed. Paid every month. For a lot of people, this felt like relief. Finally, a win for savers. Finally, a reason to park cash and breathe a little easier. But here's the uncomfortable part. If 5% is such a good deal, why do so many people still feel like they're falling behind? Why does money grow on paper, but life somehow keeps getting more expensive? And why does this safe return feel quieter than it should? Because beneath the calm surface of that 5%, something is happening. Most people never stop to question. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. For generations, a savings account has meant one thing above all else: safety. No market swings, no headlines, no sleepless nights. You put money in, the bank protects it, and over time, it grows. Slowly, yes, but reliably. That idea runs deep. Parents teach it to their kids. Schools reinforce it. Even financial advice usually starts with the same sentence: build your savings first. So when banks began offering 5% again, it didn't just sound attractive. It sounded responsible, almost moral. 5% feels like discipline being rewarded. It feels like proof that patience still works in a world obsessed with fast money and risky bets. And unlike investments, savings accounts don't ask you to understand much. There's no learning curve, no charts, no timing. You don't have to be right. You just have to wait. The monthly interest deposits reinforce that feeling. Every time you see a few extra dollars land in your account, it sends a quiet signal. This is working. You're doing the smart thing. Banks understand this psychology very well. That's why the number itself matters so much. 5% sounds strong. It sounds solid. It sounds like a shield. But what almost no one talks about is this: safety isn't just about not losing money. It's about whether that money can still do what you need it to do in the real world. And that's where the story starts to shift. Because while your balance may be growing, the value of what that money can buy is changing too, just slowly enough that it doesn't feel urgent at first. The problem with a 5% savings account isn't that the number is fake. It's very real. The interest gets paid. The balance goes up. The problem is that this number doesn't exist in isolation. Money doesn't live on a spreadsheet. It lives in the real world, where prices move, costs creep, and value slowly slips when you're not paying attention. This is where inflation enters the story. Not the dramatic kind you hear about on the news, not the spikes that cause panic, but the steady, grinding kind that works in the background. When inflation runs at 3, 4, or even 5%, it changes the meaning of your interest. That 5% isn't growth anymore. It's maintenance. And maintenance is a generous language, because the moment you account for inflation, the real return shrinks. Your money may look bigger, but its ability to buy the same things quietly weakens. Now, add taxes. Interest earned in a savings account isn't protected. It's taxable income. So before your money even gets a chance to keep up with rising prices, a portion of that 5% is already gone. What's left is thinner than most people expect. But here's the real issue. You don't feel this loss. There's no alert, no red number, no sudden drop. You still see progress. You still see growth. And that's enough to keep the story believable. This is why savings accounts are so powerful psychologically. They hide erosion behind stability. They turn slow loss into something that feels like patience. Meanwhile, the cost of living adjusts faster than your awareness. Groceries inch up, rent resets, insurance gets repriced, services quietly cost more than they used to. Nothing breaks all at once. It just stretches, and over time, that 5% starts doing less than it promised, not because the bank lied, but because the environment changed. The uncomfortable truth is this: you can earn interest every single month and still be standing still. And once you accept that, a much harder question follows. If 5% isn't really 5%, then why does this moment exist at all? That's where we go next. 5% didn't come back because banks suddenly felt generous. It came back because the system needed something. When interest rates rise, money becomes expensive. Lending slows, spending cools. And in that environment, banks need deposits more than they need borrowers. Your savings become their fuel. That's why high-yield savings accounts appear during moments like this. They're not rewards for loyalty. They're tools for balance. Banks Banks raise rates just enough to attract cash, lock it in, and stabilize their own position. From their side, it makes perfect sense. From yours, it feels like an opportunity. But there's a catch hiding in the timing. These offers are strongest when uncertainty is high, when people are already nervous, when doing nothing feels safer than making a move. 5% becomes an anchor, a place to wait, a place to pause decisions. And pauses are powerful because while your money sits, the broader system keeps adjusting. Asset prices move, costs reset, policies shift. The world doesn't wait with you. This is why timing matters more than the rate itself. High savings yields tend to show up late in cycles, not early. They arrive when protection is being emphasized over expansion. In other words, 5% is a signal, not just a number. It signals that capital is being invited to stay still. And when enough people accept that invitation, the consequences ripple outward. The quiet truth is that safety, when offered loudly, usually comes with conditions. And the biggest condition is time. The danger of a 5% savings account isn't loss, it's delay. When money sits in place, it doesn't just avoid risk, it avoids opportunity. An opportunity cost is invisible in the same way inflation is. You don't see what could have happened. You only live with what didn't. While savings accounts compound slowly, other parts of the economy don't move at the same pace. Prices reset fast. Assets reprice faster. Wages, when they adjust, rarely do so evenly. The gap widens quietly. This is how people end up doing everything right and still feeling stuck. They were saved. They avoided mistakes. They stayed disciplined. But discipline without awareness turns into stagnation. And here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. Doing nothing is still a decision. Choosing safety in a shifting environment doesn't freeze time. It just hands control to forces you're no longer engaging with. Banks benefit from this stillness. The system benefits from predictable behavior. What doesn't benefit is long-term purchasing power over years, not months. The compounding works in reverse. Not dramatically, not violently, just enough to matter. The tragedy isn't that people lose money. It's that they lose time believing they were protected. And once that time is gone, no interest rate can buy it back. Which brings us to the final question. If the 5% account no longer guarantees progress, what does it actually represent? This isn't an argument against saving, and it's not a call to gamble, speculate, or chase returns. Savings still matter. Liquidity still matters. Stability still matters. What's changed is the role a savings account plays. A 5% yield used to mean progress. Now, it mostly means preservation, and sometimes not even that. The mistake isn't choosing safety. The mistake is believing safety alone is enough. In an environment where prices adjust faster than awareness, understanding becomes more valuable than comfort. Not predicting the future, understanding the trade-offs of the present. Because money that feels protected can still fall behind quietly, and protection without perspective creates a false sense of control. The people who struggle the most aren't reckless. They're patient without context. And that's a dangerous combination. The 5% savings account isn't dying because rates will eventually fall. That's just the cycle. It's dying because it no longer guarantees what people think it does. It no longer guarantees progress. It no longer guarantees security over time. It only guarantees that your money will sit still in a world that doesn't. And that's the real shift. Safety hasn't disappeared, but it's been redefined. So the question isn't whether 5% is good or bad. The question is simpler and harder. If your money feels safe, but your future feels more expensive every year, what are you actually protecting?